So I'm Sally Urent and I'm the CEO of Forum for the Future. Forum is a sustainable development non-profit. We've been around for over 20 years now, trying to accelerate the pace of change towards sustainable development, and we do that through working in partnership with organisations that are keen to pursue sustainable development, and then increasingly we pull together collaborations of like-minded organisations that share common challenges and want to solve for those challenges. And underpinning all of that is the work that we do, which is around equipping change makers to think and act for systems change. A number of things that could happen differently, which would encourage all of these pockets of great practice to begin to come together. The first, I think the philanthropic community could rethink how it goes about its philanthropy. Many philanthropic organisations give small amounts of money to lots of organisations, and therefore are missing an opportunity to aggregate that investment in a way that, even just by requiring all of their different grantees to talk to one another and to ask that question, what is it that we're actually trying to do? What's that vision of success, and what's our role in driving that vision, and therefore what do we need others to do around us? And in other words, accepting that one organisation working alone is not going to drive significant change. And that's a hard truth, because we all like to think that we're doing great stuff. But I think having a stronger sense of shared vision and understanding our own role in creating that vision requires a bit of humility and modesty, which is sometimes lacking from the non-profit sector.
Yeah.
And that's what we try and do at Forum, which is to keep taking a step back and saying, okay, does this portfolio of projects add up to anything significant? And if it doesn't, what is it that we do less of? What do we do more of? And where do we need to make those other connections? And in the work that we're doing right now around the big systemic challenges of how do we stay below 1.5 degrees temperature rise by the end of this century, how do we ensure equitable access to nutrition for a growing population, and how can our global supply chains be sustainable? We're trying to be a bit more deliberate about what's our contribution to those challenges, and therefore how can we work with others that have got an equally powerful contribution to make, and how can we build those contributions together? Well, in terms of power dynamics, the first step in understanding how to navigate that is to understand the power dynamics, and to really, in any mapping of any system, map out who has got the power, who's got the influence, and to understand how that power is being used, and then who doesn't have the power, but actually who is in a position of huge influence, and to really understand that power-influence dynamic, and be really clear about, okay, who might have the power and the influence, but critically the willingness to change. If you're trying to have a conversation with an individual that has power and influence and no willingness, it's going to be a very long and difficult conversation.
They don't want something to happen.
But there's always somebody in an organisation that can see the need to do something differently. And a lot of our work is inspiring those change makers to understand their power, understand their influence in a different way that allows them to exert that power and influence to create something new and something different. And that's a really exciting conversation to have. On the resistance piece, it's just a facet of human nature. I mean, as humans we're very adaptive, but we don't really like change. And actually I think we can make change more palatable. But then there are big structural resistance features that we need to understand and just accept to some extent. So the way the global economy works, there is structural resistance in there in many forms that will stop sustainable development. So instead of viewing it as structural resistance, how can we reimagine it? How can we create proof points of a different way for the economy to operate, and by illustrating those proof points, have that conversation about, well, it currently is this way, but it could be this way, and look, that's working. And I'm talking about an accelerated repatterning of a system. So I'm talking about the outcome of acceleration, not necessarily the process. And for me, acceleration is achieved by actually doing things differently. Yeah, to some extent, you can do the same thing but just do it faster. But that overall acceleration is multifaceted. It isn't just about doing the same thing but hoping it's going to go a bit faster because you put more effort into it. It's saying, okay, if we want to see an accelerated repatterning of the food system, what are those multiple points of intervention that we need to understand as a whole, and actually by a suite of different approaches, the outcome will be acceleration. Allowing proper time for a process. You can't just invent trust overnight, and so building time into any collaborative process to allow that trust to develop is really important, and engaging in interactions in different situations. It's sometimes really hard to build trust in a workshop where people are adopting their stated positions, which can be really adversarial. So how do you use those softer moments of interaction to build that trust at a human level? So there's a whole variety of different approaches, but I suppose one of my points was this does take time, and there are no shortcuts to it at all. And so having a smart process, which is a mix of the formal, the informal, space for people to be honest about how they're feeling, the stuff that's not rocket science, but we shortcut it because it's soft. I suppose my answer to that would be, yeah, in 20 years sustainability has gone from the fringes. It wasn't even a word probably that people recognised too. Everyone was talking about it, but in very different ways. So the question that I have is, how do we build on that increased awareness and say, yeah, that was okay, but it's not good enough? And actually the field, the practice of systems change, when you bring it into sustainability challenges, offers us a huge opportunity to really up our ambition and to properly design for transformational change. So at Forum we use the narrative of sustainability as mainstream to say that's all great, but it isn't enough. Actually, the next wave is designing for catalytic transformational change. And if you're a business, yes, you're talking about sustainability, you probably haven't yet fully hardwired it into your mainstream strategy. That's the next wave, and we move from big corporates having two strategies, the business strategy, sustainability, to they have one strategy.
Systems
That's the
change.
next wave.
Yeah.